Hello everyone, hope you're all well. I've really enjoyed listening to people's thoughts for the day. It's been really encouraging and I feel I've gotten to know people perhaps a lot better in lockdown, so that's been really good. So thank you for that. I've got my flowers. I don't know where there's so much arranged, but they're there. I'll just leave a little bit for you. And just a few thoughts from me. I think over lockdown it's been meant so many different things to so many people. It's been a really busy time. You've been at work and all the frontline workers and everybody involved in having to continue to work. It must have been a really, really busy time. Yet for some, it's been a really sad time and human tragedy, etc. I can't imagine how some people will feel. Some have seen it, I've heard it described as a great pause, and I think from listening to a lot of people have been saying, life couldn't have continued as it was. So it's been great to have this sort of pause. Obviously it remains to be seen how we use this to go forward, but that's another interesting side. And again, some have seen it as a gift. I don't know if you know the ex-Liverpool manager Brendan Rodgers. He was on East Midlands Today a couple of days ago, and he described it as a gift. The fact that he's been able to spend really quality time with his family. So again, we're all coming from different places, and it brings us back to that the paths we all have for our lives are all very, very different. And I just want to look at Jeremiah 29. You'll know the scripture well. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. And what may look like a crisis to us can still be in the plan of God. And I take great comfort from the fact that God is still in control. He knows what's happening. He's very strategic. And I am sure that behind the scenes, he is doing some amazing things that will come to light in the months, years, eternity. Maybe we'll not see the results until then. But I think right now we may not understand it all, but we have an assurance that nothing is random with God. And if you can imagine yourself sat in a cinema, you've got a central seat, you've got your popcorn, you're waiting for a show to start, the big velvet curtains in front of you, and you can hear the musicians starting to tune up, so it adds to all the excitement and anticipation of the start of the show. But behind that curtain there's lots of things happening. The sets are being put into place, actors are getting the makeup on and the costumes, the lighting, the cameras, the PA system, there's lots of things going on behind that curtain. And I think it's the same way with God. He is so busy behind the scenes doing lots of things. And I appreciate it's really important that we can't see what's happening, but to trust God in all that, and to trust that the plan that he has for your life is still happening. It is still, you are still on track. But I think sometimes things can happen in our lives that put us off the plan, put us off track. Maybe some of us experienced a betrayal, or we've been let down, or we had a project that didn't work out, or a relationship didn't work out. And sometimes we can think, well, is there really a plan? Do I really have a destiny? What's the point of me being here? And just a few little examples to hopefully help you. You all know the story of Joseph, how he was sold into slavery by his brothers. He was thrown down a pit and then sold into slavery. That should have been the end of Joseph's story. But as you know, he went on to end up in jail. Right place, right time. Admittedly not a very nice place, but he was there for when Potiphar needed his dream interpreting, and you know the rest of the story. Again, sometimes it doesn't need things to come against us. God allows in his plan for disappointments, and sometimes we are our own worst enemies, and we get sidetracked with things. We're not enough of this, we're too much of that, we don't do the right things, we get tempted, we go off course. But God in his mercy has allowed in his plan for that. Just by the story of Jonah, as you know, God told Jonah to go to Nineveh. So Jonah hopped on a ship in the opposite direction, and there was a storm, and he realised that everybody was going to drown. So he went up on deck and confessed to the crew, who were very loving and thanked him for his honesty, and then proceeded to throw him overboard. But God in his mercy allowed for Moby Dick to appear, and he ended up in the belly of a whale for 3 days. I imagine it wasn't cruise ship standard, very smelly, dirty, lots of seaweed. People do eat seaweed though. But as you know, he ended up being put out on land and went on to fulfill his destiny. So God recovered that mistake, that wrong judgment, and he got Jonah back on plan. And it leads me to thinking that when you make a mistake, or I have this little thing in my ear saying, oh, you've messed up again, you're never going to achieve what God has for you, you know, you're not enough of this, you're too much of that, you're limited in that area, you're not this, you're not that. But no person and can stop what God has for you, including yourself. What you say to yourself is really the most important thing. And God doesn't view our mistakes like we do. He uses mistakes to propel us into what he has for us. And an example of that is Abraham and Sarah. They were promised a child, but took matters into their own hands, and Abraham ended up having a child with Sarah's maid servant Hagar, who they called Ishmael. And that was a mistake. But 4 generations later, in Genesis, we read that so when the Midianite merchants came by, his brothers pulled Joseph out of the system and sold him for 20 shekels of silver to the Ishmaelites. So God, in his amazing wisdom, used that mistake to bring about the rescue of Joseph. So again, we don't need to beat ourselves up when we get it wrong. Your mistake is not a surprise for God. He's already laid out your new beginning. So if you feel a bit down, if you feel, well, I can't really see what God has for me, all I can say is start dreaming again. That mistake hasn't cancelled your destiny, and God still has a purpose for you to fulfill. Thank you. I searched the world, but it couldn't fill me. Man's empty praise and treasures that fade, never enough. Then you came along, and you put me back together, and every desire is now satisfied here in your love. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. Lord, there's nothing is better than you. And no, it's true. No, I'm not afraid to show you